Hello there, Ramblers, and welcome to another instalment of Reese Rambles, my weekly podcast all about the latest comings and goings, movings and shakings, and indeed all the rest of it in the worlds of vintage and retro computing, gaming, and technology. Hope you're doing well out there. It has been another gloriously hot and sunny week here in the UK, but it's looking like things are finally on the turn this weekend because it seems we have some rain coming in some parts of the country, which usually would be a very welcome thing. But in my case, I'm actually going to be outside all day on Sunday, Sunday the 26th of July. Why am I going to be outside? Well, I think this will be of interest to some of you, particularly if you are local to the area within which this event is happening, because I am indeed going to be at an event. And here are the details. This is the Retro Collective Summer Tabletop Sale and Retro Market, which is taking place, as mentioned, on Sunday the 26th of July. This is in Gloucestershire in the UK, just outside of Stroud. I don't know if you're familiar with the Retro Collective. Of course, at home of the Cave YouTube channel, perhaps most famously, but they've also got the Arcade Archive down there and a load of other quite interesting stuff going on. Home of Heber as well, the people behind the Mr. MultiSystem. And there are only 5 tickets left to this event. So this is a ticketed event. They do have to strictly control numbers due to the nature of the site. And you do actually get a fair bit for your entry cost of $29.99. You get lunch. You also get access to all of the stuff that they have going on at the Retro Collective. So the Cave, the Arcade Archive, the new pump house that they've built, and all the wonderful retro computers and arcades that they have on display there. You also get access to some rather interesting traders. I am included in that number. That's why I'm going to be there, and that's why I'm talking about this, because I do have my own table there. I'm going to be selling off some stuff from my personal collection, 20 plus years worth of collecting. Some rather interesting boxed machines and games and stuff like that, accessories of various bits of pieces. Stuff you've probably seen on the channel as well. I was hoping to have some examples here to show to you so I could say, look, here's your chance to get this or that or whatever. Unfortunately, I have had to leave everything until the very last minute. So when I finish recording this, and indeed tomorrow on the Saturday, I am actually going to be sorting stuff out here at the studio and finalising my list of wares that I have for sale. But I promise there will be some good stuff in there and at good prices as well, because I need to downsize. I desperately need to downsize. I've tried selling stuff online in the past. I've tried sending stuff to people, to YouTubers and streamers, donating stuff to other channels, but it's such a pain that shipping stuff with couriers here in the UK, particularly computer equipment, stuff like that. Stuff always gets damaged or it gets lost, and I've become a bit disheartened with the whole process. So I've been meaning to sell as much as I can in person. It's also nice to meet people and talk to people. I do love these in-person events and actually talking to the people I've been chatting to online for so long as well. And just, seeing stuff go to a good home where it's going to be appreciated. So I'm very much looking forward to being a part of this. And indeed, as mentioned, there are some other rather excellent traders there as well. So I think this is a good opportunity for me to shill the event a bit, if you will. And of course, I will give a bit of an update next week for those of you who aren't able to attend. Last 5 tickets left. This will be linked down below. If you are interested in picking up a ticket at the last minute. Please don't show up if you don't have a ticket. Due to the nature of the setup that they have there, they do have to limit the number of people that they can let in for health and safety purposes. Anyway, access to all those wonderful traders. You get lunch and also access to all the stuff that they have going on at the Retro Collective. The traders in particular that I'm talking about are the Retro Collective themselves, who are going to be selling some stuff from their own personal collections, from the Cave and from the Arcade Archive, so duplicates, that kind of thing. They have an awful lot of stuff. I know they've been working on their inventory over the past couple of years. A good opportunity to meet Neil, of course, and Holly and Richard and all the Dan, all the other wonderful people there. We have the Swindon Museum of Computing, so Keith will be there, which is great to hear. I love Keith. I haven't met him. In person in quite a while now, so it'd be really great to meet up with him for the first time in a while. I bought a Dragon 32 from him a few years ago, which he'd actually personally kind of restored one of the museum's duplicates, and it was a really, really excellent machine. So hopefully more examples like that. Might end up picking up some stuff, which is kind of counterproductive, but I think it's all par for the course with these events. Retrosect are going to be there, so that's Ben, who runs the rather fantastic classic car and classic computing and gaming shop, just not a million miles away from the Retro Collective itself, just down the road in Gloucestershire. I haven't had a chance to make it there yet, but I know Elliot from the Retro Future did a really good video about that place. I know a few other computing YouTubers have also visited there as well, so it's something I've been meaning to check out. And he'll have vintage toys as well as all of the expected gaming and computing stuff, so it'll be good to check out what Ben has available. We've got Console Revive, which is a games console restoration revival. Not only do they sell fully restored consoles like your Game Boys and stuff in brand new reproduction shells with IPS screens and all of that, but they also sell all the parts, so you can build those things for yourself. So if you have a project in mind, quite a good opportunity to pick up those parts in person. And it lists here Game Boy, GameCube, PlayStation, and more. We also have Flame Lily Retro, my very good friend Derek. It will be really nice to see Derek again. I know he's a regular listener and a long-term supporter of everything that I do. And also stocks a rather extensive offering of all sorts of knickknacks and gadgets that are otherwise quite hard to source here in the UK. So stuff like the Blue Scuzzy, the Pico Gus, the Pico Mem, and the Pico GX. Kits and fully assembled versions to purchase. Also Denise and Alicia 1200, which are mini ITX Amiga recreations and all sorts of Amiga bits and pieces as well. So it would be great to see Flame Lily there. Bob's Bits, which is Rob, who will be selling a selection of bare reproduction PCBs and general hardware and software. So it would be nice to meet Rob. And we have Otaku Azrael, Alan, which is also a selection of retro games and consoles, arcade PCBs, arcade components, and content creation tech. Interesting. So if you're an aspiring retro YouTuber yourself, maybe stuff like lighting and microphones and that kind of stuff. I'm not quite sure. I'm not familiar with that particular vendor, so it'll be interesting to check out what they have to offer. So I've already talked about the other stuff, access that you get, the lunch and everything else. There's also an ongoing supply of snacks, sweets and soft drinks available. And also, of course, they have the kitchen at the cave as well for your teas and your coffees and that kind of thing. So very much looking forward to this event. I'm going to have to be there quite early in the morning, but it opens to the public at 11 a.m. and closes at 5 p.m. And indeed, all of the traders are going to be there all day. But I suppose if you want to pick up the really good stuff, you're going to have to be there at opening at 11 a.m. Very, very much looking forward to this, as mentioned. No parking on site if you are familiar with the Retro Collective. I suppose I have to do some admin stuff here as well. But it is just down the road at the local industrial estate. And if you check out the website, there will be all the information that you need on that. Also, please don't bring your own items to try to sell them at the event if you are not a trader and don't have your own table pre-arranged with the Retro Collective. And, if you do buy stuff, don't take it into the cave and into the arcade archive with you. It's all there on the website. But, yeah. Anyway, that is that. And am I going to make a video on the day? I'm not quite sure. It'd be nice to do something to go on the main channel. If you've been following me for a while, you'll probably know that I've had some upheaval and stuff here at the studio. We've got a lot of building work and stuff going on behind me in the kind of wider building. And that has kind of been quite disruptive to my main channel output. So perhaps this is an opportunity to actually do something, get some footage and stuff on the day, do something a bit more informal, take off some of the pressure that I've been putting on myself. But that is the Retro Collective Summer Tabletop Sale and Retro Market. I think I've shilled that quite enough. If you are coming down on the Sunday, more than happy to do, selfies and autographs, all of that kind of thing. Meet your heroes in person, or just me. Obviously, Neil will be there. That's that. What a wonderful start to this week's Ramble. And just before we jump into the rest of the stories for this week's Ramble, let's briefly turn our attention to our wonderful sponsor, PCBWay.com, who are celebrating 12 years of offering PCB fabrication services to this community. And they are indeed celebrating that milestone in style. So if you check out the link down in the description, you will discover their 12th anniversary celebration page, where they have some quite substantial discounts on their various offerings. Not just PCB fabrication, of course, course, but also CNC machining, injection molding, 3D printing, and sheet metal fabrication. As we can see, we have discounts ranging from $5 up to $200. We also have offerings relating to their PCB fabrication services, their electronics design services, 3D printing and CNC machining, and all sorts of other bits of hardware as well. So thank you once again to PCBWay for your ongoing support for both Reese Rambles and my main channel, ctrl-alt-rees. And indeed, if you are looking for some money off one of those services for your next project, do check out the link down in the description below. Doom! id Software's 1993 first-person shooter is a game that should hopefully need no introduction as far as this audience is concerned. And of course, a big shout-out is in order to the Doom Shrine behind me, my collection of Doom-related releases and paraphernalia dating from the shareware release, where it all started for me all the way back in 1994, all the way up to some modern Doom Eternal-related stuff. Don't have any Dark Ages-related stuff yet, but Xbox releases, console releases, all sorts of stuff. And I should point out that none of that will be for sale on Sunday, because that's my Doom Shrine, and I will take that to my grave with me. Anyway, that of course means that we have a Doom-related story coming up, and you may remember quite recently that the Doom soundtrack was added to the Library of Congress. That's a wonderful library of cultural historical artifacts, and recognising Bobby Prince's fantastic work putting that soundtrack together, of course, who we quite sadly lost quite recently. And now Doom itself has also been inducted into another institution, although perhaps one that isn't quite so grand, but still important nonetheless. The Washington Post's most influential works of American culture. Story here over on PCGamer.com by Andy Chalk. id Software's seminal 1993 shooter takes its place alongside The Federalist Papers, Moby Dick, Robert Johnson's Deal with the Devil, and Lemonade. Yeah, Doom is up there with Lemonade as one of the 25 most influential works of American culture. Yes, the story here, we often talk about Doom, the original 1993 shooter from the young upstarts at id Software, as one of the most influential video games of all time. But the Washington Post, one of the country's most highly regarded papers of record, has elevated it to an even higher plateau. It has selected Doom as one of the 25 most influential works of American culture, representing the absolute pinnacle of its era. Now, the list has been assembled to commemorate, of course, the 250th, I know America's not that old, but it's a bit older than that, the 250th anniversary of the United States itself, of course. And it's the list covers a remarkable breadth from Thomas Paine's Common Sense to the Star-Spangled Banner. Of course, I guess that's the national anthem of the United States. We have the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. We've got the Battle Hymn of the Republic, Levi's Jeans, Mickey Mouse, and the recordings of legendary bluesman Robert Johnson. That is quite an eclectic selection of stuff, isn't it? But, one of the noteworthy inclusions as far as we're concerned in the gaming community is Doom. And this is apparently to represent the decade of 1986 to 1995. And it has beat out some heavyweight competition, including Amy Tan's The Joy Luck Club, Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, The Simpsons, Seinfeld, and the MTV reality series The Real World. Wow, I just about remember that, The Real World. I remember that being on. It was like first ever reality TV show, wasn't it? The Simpsons. Doom has beaten The Simpsons, apparently the most influential American creation of the decade of 1986 to 1995, if you'll believe that. Anyway, in December 1993, id Software gave away part of its new video game free over the internet. College networks buckled under the traffic and bulletin boards lit up as the game eventually was installed on more computers than Microsoft Windows 95 at the time, Washington Post video game critic Gene Park wrote. I mean, it probably was installed on more computers than Windows 95 in 1993. I think that's pretty much a given. Anyway, Doom was foundational, he continues, in digital entertainment. A 3D world viewed in first person, self-published with no gatekeepers and no retail store, as it gave rise to user-generated content years before anyone had a name for it. Programmer John Carmack handed the audience the tools to build their own corners of hell. Park acknowledged the negative perceptions of Doom over the years in his ode to the game's impact, saying it was a scapegoat for the 1999 Columbine High School shooting in Colorado, a ground zero of America's ongoing nightmare. But, he added, it was people with guns, not a game, that took lives. A grieving nation feared a new form of entertainment it misunderstood. Hearings were held on games and music, a template that would replay after nearly every mass shooting since. Ultimately, in Park's view, Doom embodies America. The game's spirit of sharing and community, along with its pioneering approach to guiding players through abstract environments in 3D space, is rooted in the upbringing of designer John Romero, who is Native American and Mexican. That's quite an important consideration, actually. Yeah, of course, John Romero with his Native American and Mexican ancestry. And quoting Romero, Park continued, a lot of Doom's design, especially the level design, was really influenced by just that understanding of the environment, the world, and that comes from my dad, my grandma, everybody. Generations, he says, where people lived on the land and they believed to be shared. And there we go. Romero himself has tweeted about this. He is pretty excited about its inclusion, as has Tom Hall, of course, one of the co-creators of Doom, one of the founding members of id Software. And quite frankly, obviously you know Doom is probably my favourite game of all time, hence the Doom Shrine. I'm inclined to agree. Massively influential game. Of course, the shareware model of releasing that first episode for free wasn't the first time it had done that. But of course, it did go on to influence game releases and demos and that kind of thing going forward. And of course, the first-person shooter itself. So much stuff that was invented with Doom or refined as far as Wolfenstein 3D was concerned. All sorts of tropes and things that still exist today in that genre of gaming. So, kind of hard to overstate Doom's influence, and indeed also an incredibly solid and well-rounded offering in its own right as far as gaming is concerned. So, yes, I agree. More influential than The Simpsons, though. I don't know. I know it's kind of gone downhill a bit in recent series, but there you go. I suppose that decision is theirs to make. So, the Washington Post has selected Doom as one of the 25 most influential works of American culture, representing the decade of 1986 to 1995. Now, there is also another bit of Doom-related news that was being discussed over on my Discord, and I just wanted to drop this in here. I don't think it was worthy of a whole kind of story in its own right, but this is a group of MIT students who've actually designed their own CPU. It's a RISC-V CPU that they've designed from scratch. And they have also now successfully ported Doom to it. And they've released quite a detailed technical document on how they went about that, which I think will be of great interest to our more intelligent computer science focused listeners and viewers here. I'm sure this podcast is popular among the more intelligent members of the population. Is it? I guess you guys are out there somewhere. Anyway, I thought this was quite an interesting read. There is some information here on the CPU as well on the same website. So it's a RISC-V RV32IM with 5-stage pipeline. It is implemented in Verilog, so this CPU doesn't actually physically exist yet. This is an FPGA-based project for the moment. And they have previously got Pong and Mandelbrot rendering running on this CPU with full VGA output as well. So I guess Doom was the next logical step. That will be linked down below. And if you want to know a bit more about the development of a RISC-V compliant CPU from scratch by MIT students and their efforts in porting various games and things over to that, you can go and give that a read as well. Great stuff. Good to have some Doom news every week. I'm never going to get bored of it. Some rather interesting news from the world of Atari next. Of course, another brand with which I have quite a long and storied history. One that predates even Doom, in fact. And speaking of long and storied histories, of course, Atari itself over the years has certainly had its share of ups and downs and more than its fair share of changes of ownership. Of course, first founded all the way back in 1972 by Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney from their original company Syzygy. And then there was the split with the home divisions, the arcade division, the Warner Communications acquisition. We had the Tramiel era, of course, ex-Commodore, who did a reasonably good job in the 80s, but ultimately ended up running the company into the ground in the 90s. Then it was, I think it was acquired by a hard disk manufacturer, JTS, and then I think Mattel ended up with the rights to Atari, and it's all very convoluted. But what you need to know is that the current owners of Atari, who were born out of the ashes of Infogrames, of course, the French game publisher and developer from back in the 80s and 90s, is actually doing quite a reasonable job with the brand under their CEO, Wade Rosen. Started off a bit shaky. There was talk of crypto and sticking their logo and name on casinos and hotels and things. And thankfully, all that talk does seem to have kind of fallen by the wayside a bit. What they have done is made some rather nice acquisitions in the form of Digital Eclipse and Night Dive. Of course, they acquired the Television brand as well, and kind of started making some of those old games for that platform available again. And actually, by and large, they haven't managed to mess it all up. Of course, they also did the Atari Plus platform, the 2600 Plus, the 7800 Plus, those rather nice re-released cartridge-based consoles. And again, they have seemingly made another rather interesting move this week, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what comes of this. So, getting to the point, Reese, Deadline.com, which is a Hollywood news website, apparently not one with which I was familiar, but looks very professional, have this exclusive story. So this is Mike Fleming Jr. Atari makes Universal movie deal for 10 iconic game properties. First up is original script by Matt Riley and Carl Hamp, with Entertainment 360 producing. Partnering with Entertainment 360, Atari has signed a deal with Universal Pictures, giving the studio the right to develop 10 classic Atari video game properties for the big screen. Universal has bought the first project from the new partnership, a feature film based on Atari IP, which will be produced by Entertainment 360's Guymon Cassidy from a screenplay by Matt Riley and Carl Hamp. Both of them will also be producers. For more than 5 decades, Atari has created games and worlds that have remained part of popular culture long after their original release, said Atari chairman and CEO Wade Rosen in confirming for Deadline. We are excited to work with Universal and Entertainment 360 to bring the spirit of our iconic brand and games to a new medium. So, the 10 games that Atari are licensing to be turned into movies. Here's the list. And it is quite a list of big hitters as far as early Atari history is concerned. We have Asteroids, Adventure, Berserk, Breakout, Centipede, Crystal Castles, Millipede, Missile Command, Pong, and Yars' Revenge. Quite a lot of interesting material for them to work with there, I'm sure you'll agree. Particularly stuff like Missile Command and Yars' Revenge. I could see them doing some quite interesting stuff with that. Adventure, of course, as well. Pong? Not quite sure how they're going to turn Pong into a movie. And, but to be fair, they can't really do much worse than Doom, could they? That's a movie adaptation of one of my favourite games of all time. The less said about that, the better. But anyway, I don't think they've announced what this first movie is actually going to be, other than it is based around some Atari IP and it is an original script. So maybe it will incorporate multiple elements from all of those games. I guess we'll have to wait and see. The Catalyst, continues the story on Deadline.com, was an original spec by Riley, the longtime studio exec at Universal, who pivoted to screenwriting and producing, and Hamp, a producer on Hellboy, who also worked on Jungle Cruise, among other films. Matt Riley and I grew up playing Atari 2600 games and have remained fans ever since, said Cassidy. The best Atari games dropped you into a world and let your imagination do the rest. Carl and Matt saw an opportunity to take that same spirit and build an original, large-scale adventure around it. From the moment we read the screenplay, we believed there was a great movie here. And indeed, that whole imagination gap, as my good friend Dave over on This Week in Retro likes to talk about. These early games are very primitive, I guess, by today's standards. Perhaps that's doing them a bit of a disservice. We had the box art to go on these rather fanciful fantasy illustrations, and basically as a kid you kind of had to build your own story around it and kind of imagine that there was far more going on behind the scenes than there actually was. But now they're actually using these old rather pixely games and fleshing them out into kind of full-blown universes and stuff, by the sounds of it. Hopefully it's good. As mentioned, we have had our fair share of bad movie adaptations. What was the other one I was thinking of? The Postal movie as well. You remember that? I mean, it had its moments, I guess. One that came up in conversation the other day, and it's not a direct movie adaptation, but I am going to talk about it as a video game-related movie. Oddly enough, I found myself talking about the Angry Video Game Nerd movie the other day. And if you haven't seen that, I can recommend it, but perhaps not for the reasons that you expect. Interesting to see a very early example of a very early gaming YouTuber trying to branch out into the world of movie making. Again, it's something that has its moments, and I don't want to knock the guy's hard work, of course, James Rolfe, but it's quite bad. And it's one of those things that has to be seen to be believed, I think. If you have nothing better to do, then watch that for 2 hours of your life. Anyway, bit of a tangent. Some Atari movies in the pipeline based on 10 of their most iconic franchises from back in the old Atari 2600 and arcade days. Very interested to see what comes of all of this. I was a huge fan of the original Xbox back in the day, which is something that I have talked about quite a lot here on Rees Rambles. There was just something about taking the PC platform. I was a big fan of PC gaming throughout the 90s, and consoleizing it and kind of democratizing it. Is that a bit too grand of a statement? Making it more accessible to the unwashed console gaming masses, and basically kind of standardizing PC gaming around one kind of common set of hardware and one platform. I just thought it was quite a noble cause, and I thought it was quite interesting. So I was very excited to pick up my own original Xbox back in the day, and it's a console that had an awful lot of love from me over the years. Indeed, I have also modded it over on my main channel with the old HDMI output and mod chip and all of that kind of stuff. Still does actually get some play today, although sadly not as much as I think it deserves. But the original Xbox had some rather interesting games available, some rather interesting platform exclusives, with Microsoft using their considerable might in that world to partner up with all sorts of interesting studios. And it's always nice to see those games kind of coming back and being brought into modern times. I mean, let's face it, the OG Xbox was 25 years ago now. There is a whole generation of people who have grown up not having experienced it. And it's just nice to see these preserved. Of course, there are many ways to play these games, and a lot of them have had their own official remasters and re-releases as well. Perhaps most notably, the Halo Master Chief Collection a few years back, which included those original Xbox Halo games, as well as all of the kind of more recent ones in that series. And this week it has been announced that there is another initiative that is going to be taking place around that whole area. And I thought it was quite interesting because of the way that they've spun this. Because it doesn't really make all that much sense to me, but maybe it makes sense to you. So this is a story over on IGN.com. Microsoft announces Xbox backward compatibility on PC with new features and achievements. So they're touting this as backward compatibility. So in the same way that you could play your original Xbox games on the 360, or indeed you could play your original PlayStation games on the PlayStation 2, or, the previous generation's consoles games on whatever the current generation is. And I will just go on a tangent here, actually, because if you're interested in the history of backward compatibility, it is supposedly widely considered that this was invented with the Atari 7800 in 1986, because of course that had Atari 2600 hardware inside it, and you can actually put your 2600 cartridges into the 7800 and play the previous generation's games in that console. And apparently that's something that was invented with that console. If you think about the NES and the SNES, the SNES couldn't play NES games, and the Mega Drive, the Genesis could play Master System games with an adapter, I think, but there you go. Interesting aside. Anyway, this kind of differs from that because these games are basically re-releases, basically remasters of those original Xbox games, but for some reason they're branding this as backward compatibility, which seems a bit odd to me. But anyway, Microsoft has announced, going back to the story on IGN, quite ably written here by Tom Phillips, I will say, credit where it's due, Microsoft has announced Xbox backward compatibility on PC, allowing you to play classic console games on PC and handhelds, such as the Xbox Ally X, for the first time. The programme begins today with an early preview containing support for 4 titles: Blinks, The Time Sweeper, Conquer Live and Reloaded, Crimson Skies, High Road to Revenge, and Fusion Frenzy. Anyone who owns the games already will automatically have a license granted on PC. The 4 games will also be added to Xbox Game Pass for those with a PC Game Pass or Ultimate subscription, and of course you'll be able to stream the titles via Xbox Cloud Gaming, allowing you to play them on pretty much any rig. And I was looking for some information on how this was actually going to work, I will say, because it says here, as I just read, that anyone who owns the games already will automatically have a license granted on PC. And I do indeed own, I think I actually own all of these games on the original Xbox. I have my original boxed copies of those. So how do I get that license? You know, I mean, these are actually some of the more affordable games on the Xbox. You can pick some of these up for a couple of quid on eBay or at a charity shop. So is it worth picking these up now to try to get that digital license? Of course, you can also just sell the game on to someone else looking to do the same thing, so it's not going to cost you anything. Is it a case of you putting the original Xbox disc into your PC and it reads that and grants you the license that way, or do you send Microsoft a photo of the game box? Or I just don't. There's so much around this that just is very confusing to me. Also, let's just read a bit more about this, just to add to the confusion. Fresh features for Xbox backward compatibility on PC games include up to 4 times resolution upscaling, VSync support, full screen and windowed display modes, anisotropic filtering, it's a word I always struggle with, enhanced anti-aliasing, and more. Xbox hardware architect Jason Ronald wrote in an announcement blog post. These games also include customizable language and audio settings, and they have also announced that in future they will be adding achievements to these games as well. Of course, achievements introduced with the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, but weren't originally available on these original Xbox games. So that just adds to the rather complicated story. So, of course, also interesting insofar as Microsoft's recent announcement that they would be not including a physical optical drive on their next generation of console, alongside Sony's PlayStation announcement that they would also be doing the same and actually discontinuing production of physical media for the PlayStation consoles. So this all-digital future, this backward compatibility, I just don't see how it, backward compatibility is where you take the original game, whether that be on a DVD or whatever, or a cartridge, as mentioned, stick it into the next generation of console and it works on that console. This doesn't feel like that. This feels like remasters or re-releases, kind of branded as, I mean, PC and Xbox, they're different. How is it? Any ideas? Still, nice to see these games coming back anyway. Yep, I'm doing it again. It being a roundup, a collection of interesting little stories posted over on my Discord server in the past week that I thought were quite interesting, but I didn't really have a great deal to say about. So rather than trying to waffle on for 5 to 10 minutes on each individual story and potentially wasting everybody's time, including my own, I thought I would bundle them all up rather neatly into this segment, which we are not referring to as Reese's Pieces, for reasons I talked about last week. And indeed, as always, these will be linked down in the description if you're watching this on my second YouTube channel, youtube.com/ReeseRambles, or in the show notes on your podcast app of choice if you are listening to this while out and about. And with that all out of the way, let's dive into the actual stories. So the first one here is NME.com. Of course, is it New Music Express? Something like that. Very, very long running and a very highly regarded name in the world of music. But this one has a retro gaming angle to it as well, because this is an emo band called Daydream Plus, who have recently released an album. And they have announced this week that they are going to be releasing a chiptune remix of that album, which is only available as a NES cartridge, or NES, of course, a Nintendo Entertainment System. Got a picture of the cartridge here, Daydream Plus Extended Forecast. A rather professional looking release. Not the first time we've had an album release on cartridge on a classic console, of course. But yeah, an emo math rock group called Daydream Plus. Probably the most niche record launch of 2026. According to NME, their jangly debut album, Second Last Day of Summer. And you can pick that up on CD and vinyl as well. You can also stream it if you like. Hooky instrumental soundscapes, it is described as here. But yeah, there's gonna be an NES exclusive release on physical cartridge. Very cool. I love creative stuff like this. And speaking of Nintendo stuff, a bit of a tenuous link, but we'll go with it. There has been another one of these recompilation projects. Now, this was a very baity story, I will say, and there was some discussion about that over on the Discord, but I'm going to include it anyway because it is interesting. This is Collider.com, and their headline here, bit of a naughty headline, Mario Kart will no longer be Nintendo exclusive next month. Doesn't that sound like a rather grand announcement? Perhaps Nintendo officially releasing a Mario Kart game on the PC or, the other consoles. That would be quite the departure, wouldn't it? I know we've had some mobile-based stuff from Nintendo, but that's not what this is. I did kind of spoil the surprise, didn't I? But yeah, this is an unofficial PC version of Mario Kart Wii, which is entering beta in August of 2026, and it's called Mario Kart Wii Compiled. It's a fan-made project. I do like that name, to be fair. And this rebuilds the 2008 racing game to run natively on computers rather than through traditional emulation. It comes from the YouTube creator PatchZ and is not an official Nintendo release, it should be noted. Well, you baited us with that headline, didn't you? And you need to, of course, as is always the case with these recompilation projects, you need to hunt down the original game files yourself. And then, of course, there's a script that you can run, which will turn those into a native PC version. And this does add to and kind of expand upon the original Wii release of Mario Kart, as we've seen in the past with some of these recompilation projects. So more than 200 tracks. And yeah, this is taken from the original game, of course, and its active community of custom track creators. Adds the retro rewind feature, which of course allows you to, rewind the last few seconds of gameplay if you, wipe yourself out or whatever. And the initial announcement footage showed the game running with extremely smooth frame rates, sharper visuals, and the ability to support higher resolutions too. And yeah, that's that. It sounds like it's being touted as quite a big release. I'm not sure if that is the case, but Mario Kart Wii Compiled, I can't see Nintendo taking very kindly to that. We have seen, of course, the N64 version of Mario Kart did get a recompilation quite recently as well as Mario 64. I've talked about those in recent months. And yeah, I was a big fan of Mario Kart on the Wii. Hopefully this will support the original peripherals as well. They were Bluetooth, they are PC compatible, so I see absolutely no reason why not. And I must admit, playing Mario Kart Wii with one of those plastic steering wheels was a particular highlight back in the day. Always a fun way to enjoy the game. Interesting project. Perhaps I'll talk a bit more about that when it is released next month. Next up, we have a notable anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the Zilog Z80 CPU. Or is it the Z80? I think that's fair to say. This is, of course, the iconic 8-bit CPU launched in July 1976, which was discontinued as recently as 2024. And the story here on tomshardware.com by Luke James, of course, acknowledges the fact that this was the CPU that powered the ZX Spectrum, the TRS-80, the MSX, the Game Boy, the Master System, the Pac-Man arcade cabinet, and many more. Of course, it was used as like a co-processor, like an audio processor in a lot of systems as well, a bit later on. It's a CPU with quite the legacy, isn't it? And this is a rather nice, it's a rather concise, but, no less interesting look at the history of the Z80 CPU and what that was all about on its 50th anniversary. I'm sure, no doubt, we'll see some excellent YouTube videos on this from various creators as well. Next up is something slightly different, although from the same website, tomshardware.com. Mark Tyson, of course, got to get a Mark Tyson mention in. And this is a 1.44 megabyte game development contest, which is being held in Korea. Of course, honouring the floppy disk. And entrants must confine the entire file set, including resources, engine, and library, to a floppy disk. The 1.44 megabytes max contest. And it's a new open to everyone floppy disk. I've just got myself a bit confused there because I've seen a graphic here that says September the 26th, 2004. And I could have sworn that this was a current thing, but no, this is actually a story from July 2026. That's evidently an older version of the same contest. Anyway, we will continue. New open to everyone floppy disk size game development competition with cash prizes for the best 3 submissions. And the freshly prepared game must be able to squeeze onto a single HD floppy disk. That's just 1.44 megabytes. Cash prizes look massive, but as the competition is hosted by the Korean games culture site 2P Game Arcade, the currency you see is Korean won. So the prize here is 1.14 million, which sounds impressive, but in Korean won that is $750. It's still quite a substantial sum of money, isn't it? It says here, remember, it's the taking part that counts. I wouldn't mind winning $750. That sounds pretty good to me. So there you go. If you want to take part in that, it is apparently open to everyone. And there have been some previous kind of takes on this formula as well. It mentions here 2018, itch.io ran a similar developer competition dubbed the Floppy Jam. And it talks here a bit about the demo scene and stuff like that. So if that's of interest, if you're a game developer, you can find the details linked down below. Another thing that has been posted over here is Bethesda on x.com, of course, Twitter. I still refuse to refer to it as x.com, but there you go. They have posted quite a long and rambling, post here, or tweet, if you like. Just kind of off the back of these announcements at Xbox and at Microsoft about, these mass redundancies, cutting funding for various studios, of course, Bethesda being part of Microsoft's whole ecosystem. And they are talking about some of their future projects and things, and kind of not directly addressing the situation, but also kind of trying to put a positive spin on things and how they are looking forward to the future, some future projects. And the one thing that stood out here was that Fallout New Vegas is going to be getting an official remaster later this year. There is quite a lot of Fallout news, Elder Scrolls news, and stuff like that in here as well. Fallout 5 on their Creation Engine 3, and also the Elder Scrolls 6. This is their new shared technology platform, their new game engine, essentially. Trying to read and talk at the same time. It is always difficult, isn't it? But yeah, Fallout New Vegas, that is quite interesting. I never really got into the Fallout games. I need to play a Fallout game properly. I think I would very much enjoy it. It is something that I have talked about on Reese Rambles as well in the past. But maybe this is my opportunity to finally check out a Fallout game. New Vegas, it is one of kind of the more highly rated ones that's set in a kind of post-apocalyptic Las Vegas setting, as is my understanding. So yeah, I'm sure that is fantastic news for fans of the series, as well as people like me who perhaps need an opportunity to try to get into it. My next story for this segment is completely different yet again. This is a website that documents all of the computers of Jurassic Park in excruciating detail. Of course, we recently lost the actor Sam Neill, who played paleontologist Alan Grant in Jurassic Park, his biggest and perhaps most iconic role, although I was actually quite surprised to be reminded of some of his other roles as well in some of the obituaries and stuff. Very, very talented, and also sounds like a thoroughly decent chap as well, Sam Neill. But yeah, apparently the author of this website was putting this article together when the news broke, and of course it ended up being quite poignant and quite topical. And this covers everything. We've got an Apple PowerBook 100 featured towards the beginning of the movie here. It's got the specs of all of the systems. Of course, we've got the Jurassic Park control room. Dennis Nedry, the IT guy there with his SGI machines and his Macs and things. Quite a, obviously a lot of memes and stuff based on that. The Unix system and all of that. The SGI Indigo, which featured quite heavily in the movie. SGI Iris. I'm not going to read all of these off, but if you want a really nerdy and detailed breakdown of every single computer that appeared in Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park movie, this is the article for you. I love this. If I had such a thing as a link of the week, maybe I should do that. If I had such a thing as a link of the week, I would probably make it this. This is quite the labour of love, and it does take me back to, the olden days of people writing their own personal blogs and just properly nerding out on their own interests and stuff and just putting it out there for other interested people to enjoy. So, proper old school internet offering, I think. This is Fabian Sanglard, and this is his website, fabiansanglard.net. The Jurassic Park computers in excruciating detail. Fabian, my hat is off to you. There you go, a hat off. The first and perhaps the only one for this week's Ramble. Next up, and just a couple of other things for you here. There is a new Wolfenstein game coming out, which might sound quite surprising considering all of the news out of Microsoft recently. Of course, all the id Tech people being made redundant. And, of course, we had the excellent... it's just completely slipped my mind what the last two... the New Order. That's the one there. It is mentioned in the article, of course. The New Order, and there was also Youngblood, it was called, something like that. I don't remember playing that one, but I did enjoy the New Order rather a lot. It was a rather excellent game in the series. Of course, we've had Castle Wolfenstein, Beyond Castle Wolfenstein, and Wolfenstein 3D as well. So it is a franchise that has been kind of simmering away in the background for all these years, and one that's always worth revisiting. Now, again, a bit of a baity headline here, because there are some rumours and things that there is another kind of mainstream first-person shooter Wolfenstein game in the works, but this isn't actually referring to that. It does reference that, but this is talking about a tabletop RPG, which is apparently coming out later this year. So... Wolfenstein the role-playing game is an official upcoming project from Machine Games, Bethesda and Modifius that is set to launch on GameFound this fall. Kicking off the crowdfunding campaign in spectacular fashion, it's one of the most highly anticipated tabletop RPGs on the docket for this year and will be taking players back to the timeline of Machine Games' The New Order and The New Colossus. I'd forgotten about The New Colossus, another excellent game in the series as well. Was it an expansion? Anyway. So it just goes on to say that there aren't many details and things at the moment, so I won't waste any more time on this, but all you need to know is that there is a Wolfenstein tabletop RPG coming out later this year. There will be a crowdfunding campaign for that, and hopefully I'll be able to talk about that in a bit more detail closer to the time. Finally, one more thing that was posted on my Discord server this week was a development progress update for the MultiSystem 2. I have previously stated that I am, of course, quite close personal friends with the people at the Retro Collective and Heber, Richard and Neil and all the rest of those guys, so I do need to state that up front, but I am very excited about the concept of a proper handheld Mr. system. This isn't one that uses the DE10 Nano development board. This is a custom developed PCB from scratch. I know that Takiudon is also working on a similar console as well, which I'm also very much looking forward to seeing. But there has been, off the back of their video a few weeks back when they first unveiled this quite detailed update about the development process, development progress and things. Some of the feedback that they have had from people, from viewers at the time, and how they are taking that on board. And also how they're, also asking for some more feedback from the community as well. This is very much a community kind of driven thing, which is always great to see. Asking for stuff like colours that people might like to see for the outer casing and, other stuff along those lines. So there is a blog post over on Heber that does embed a YouTube video as well, covering all of that stuff. Quite a nice little roundup of stories from my rather cultured, I will say, and wide-ranging, members of my community in the past week. Thank you to everyone who has shared those stories. They're all very interesting. And on that note, my dearest ramblers, of course, that brings me around rather neatly to my regular Videos of the Week feature, wherein I feature videos that I've seen here on the old YouTubes in the past week, or indeed not seen, videos that have been recommended to me by my community that I haven't quite got around to watching yet, but I promise I will, that have entertained or educated or enlightened, otherwise improved my life in some small way. Sometimes they are retro and vintage computing and gaming related. Sometimes they aren't. I personally found all of these quite interesting, and hopefully you'll find at least one of them interesting too. And if you do, please do follow the links down in the description or indeed in the show notes in your podcast app of choice if you want to explore any of these videos further. I'm sure you're familiar with the format by now. And with all of that out of the way, let's dive into the first one. This is Dune 2. Dune. I'm tempted to say June, but that is the Leicester man in me. But yeah, of course, Dune 2, the Commodore 64 D-Make. Now, this was made as part of a demo party, a game dev competition. There we go, going to get my words out eventually. The 2026 AROC party game dev competition, no less. And yeah, this is basically Dune 2 on the Commodore 64. It looks like a lot of fun. We've got this top-down RTS type view here. Looks pretty comprehensive, and indeed you can actually go and download it and check it out for yourself, either on real hardware or indeed on your Mister or emulator or what have you. It features 64 units and buildings, any number of units on screen, multicolour graphics, one sprite, 4-direction scrolling battlefield, and you can build bases and produce units. It also has enemy AI implemented, so the enemy will manage its own economy, build and produce units, defend its base, counterattacks when provoked, and no mercy. That sounds very good. And there are some future developments planned as well. So this isn't just the one-off for the demo party. This is actually going to be finished off and presumably turned into quite a more substantial release, although it is looking fairly comprehensive already. So future developments include more maps, units, and gameplay improvements, as you might expect. Over on the YouTube channel, CPS Viz, and yeah, of course, that will be linked down below. As already explained, this actually looks brilliant as far as Commodore 64 games goes. This is actually very, very competent. I like it. Next up, for you, for your delectation, we have a tiny monitor that you can make, and this is from Retro Built Games. And this is a 3D printable CRT style monitor. Of course, it has a modern flat panel as its actual display. It's got this pivoting and rotating base that you've just seen here in this intro. And you can actually build this entire thing from scratch yourself. In the future, it hasn't been fully released yet. It is still being refined, I'd just like to point out. This is FDM printable only, so that's quite important to bear in mind, of course. And it is a kit bash of parts in a style mashup between a mini Sony TV and the Amiga 1000 monitor. Of course, we have seen similar projects in the past, but this is something that you can build yourself. It has it's described as an everything input video source device, which includes HDMI, VGA, component, S-video, and composite video, 3.5mm stereo audio input and output. And yeah, it has decent built-in speakers, apparently, and a 2048 by 1536 OEM iPad IPS LCD panel. Full-length video, assembly guide, and GitHub repo coming soon. I'll probably do a much more in-depth look at this as a story in the near future when this thing is actually released. But very, very promising so far. And I do like the little 30-second teaser video over on Retro Built Games. Next up for you, I have a new video from Dan Wood, and this is all about the Commodore, Commodore, it has a Commodore badge on it, Mega 65, and it is a modern recreation of Commodore's unreleased Commodore 65, of course. But in 2026, it is becoming something much bigger. It supports the C64, the PET, the Commodore 16, and the Plus 4. And we do have some more Plus 4 news, surprisingly enough, in a moment. Brand new Commodore 128 core and even an Amiga 500 core. So this is the ultimate Commodore computer. This is an FPGA-based machine, similar to the Spectrum Next, of course, which, as you know, I've covered quite a bit in the past. I like Dan Wood. I've met him in person a few times. He's a thoroughly nice chap. Of course, I have appeared on the Retro Hour, his podcast, a few times as well. Oh, sponsor spot, skip that. And this is quite the comprehensive coverage of the Mega 65 and what it's all about and what it's capable of and what he actually uses his Mega 65 for. And some really good history in here about the 65 and how that was going to be a machine produced by Commodore back in the day, how this whole project came about, and of course about the other various machines that this supports. So wonderful viewing, a very well put together video, as you might expect from Dan Wood. And yeah, I hope I don't really need to say much more than that. Nice half hour's worth as well, 27 minutes, 27 seconds. So you can stick that on your big telly while you have your dinner. Next up, I have, and I did promise some more +4 news, oddly enough. Quite an underrated machine and perhaps a forgotten machine in Commodore's past. I think in the mainstream, certainly, it's very much overshadowed by the C64 and the Amiga, of course. But, of course, the +4 was no less important. And this is a new demo. This is Return to the Promised Land, this is called. It is also coming out of this AROC Party 2026, of course, which led to that June remake or demake, I guess, on the C64. And it's really nice to see what this little machine is capable of. Of course, very, very limited hardware in the Commodore +4. I had no idea there was... I mean, look at this 3D rendered cube. That is impressive. I had no idea there was a demo scene for the Commodore +4, but here it is. And there is a link in the video description as well where you can actually go and download this and you can run it on your own original hardware, or indeed, an emulator if you have an accurate enough emulator, or, Mr. Core or whatever. I just think it's nice to talk about the Commodore +4, and it's always nice to see people pushing the limits of these old machines. Next up, something completely different for you, and my last two videos in this roundup are pretty much completely different. This is Network Chuck, which is a channel that I wasn't actually familiar with, but this is all to do with, another kind of broader interest of mine, which is to do with video production, and in this case, the World Cup Broadcast Network. So if you've been watching the World Cup, of course, sadly, England was defeated, weren't we, by Argentina, and then we went on to see them having their bottoms well and truly kicked by Spain. So thank you ever so much to Spain for that. I'm actually not really a big fan of football, I will say, but I did watch at least those couple of matches. Always interesting to see England play, I guess. Oh, that's my standing desk beeping at me. Anyway, but of course, the thing that we perhaps don't consider is just the insane technology and logistics behind actually broadcasting this whole tournament to the entire world. And in this case, they did actually move around quite a bit. You know, they had games up in Canada and down in Mexico and, of course, in the USA itself, as is my understanding. And this whole infrastructure had to basically support all of that and move around as required and get that, wonderful... I think it was all, like the coverage was all in 4K, broadcast all around the world in real time with, local commentary and the rest of it as well. Crazy, really, when you start to think about it. And this video actually goes into a lot of depth about that infrastructure and how it all works. Modern broadcast technology, video production technology. It's fascinating stuff. Network Chuck. It is another half an hour long video. So there you go, 31 minutes and 6 seconds. I will confess, I haven't actually watched all of this one yet. I like to be honest about these things. But from the bits that I've seen scrubbing through it, it's on my watch later list. I'm definitely going to sit down and check this one out properly because it is a really well-produced professional video. I mean, they have over 5 million subscribers, so you would perhaps expect that. But they do have all sorts of behind-the-scenes access to all of this technology and how it all works. And it's fascinating. It's an absolutely fascinating area of technology. Now, I'm going to take a moment to talk about something completely different, another live sports event that I thought was worth a mention because I am watching this at the moment. And I do apologise for this, but it is part of my contract that I do need to talk about this at every available opportunity. Because much like the Church of Scientology famously has its fingers in its hooks into, or I should say, perhaps its fingers as well. I'd rather not know about that. Many people in the celebrity world, CrossFit, the Church of CrossFit, has its hooks into me once more. As I have talked about, I am coming up on completing my second month at CrossFit Leamington. I've been training there 3 times a week, haven't missed a single session for the past 2 months, and I'm enjoying it immensely. I had 18 months off before that, but I've been kind of CrossFitting on and off since 2016. And it is the CrossFit Games at the moment. And if you want to know what the sport is all about, this is quite a good introduction to it. Let's skip past these people doing these ridiculous pull-ups, because that's something that's people like to mock us for. But yeah, this is going on at the moment, and it is being live streamed as well on YouTube. And they have gone back to their roots. It is the 20th CrossFit Games this year, and they have gone back to their roots and actually gone back to the original ranch where it all started. In more recent years, it did turn into a bigger kind of stadium event. And just to explain what this is all about, of course, CrossFit is the sport of competitive working out. So, weightlifting, gymnastics, that kind of stuff. But they structure it in such a way that people can compete against each other and actually be scored for it. So whether it's who lifts the most weight or who can do the most rounds in a given time, stuff like that. And this is kind of, these are the top 60 people in the world at this sport. It starts with the Open earlier in the year, which everyone in the world of CrossFit, including myself, can take part in. And I have indeed taken part in it in the past. I actually found out earlier today that I was in the top 1,000 people in the UK in my age group the last 2 times I competed, in 2019 and 2020. So that's quite cool. It's completely irrelevant to this audience, but I thought I would give people a bit of an insight into this aspect of my life. And, it is being live streamed on YouTube. It is an ongoing thing. And interspersed with the actual competitive side of it, there are things like this little documentary that you can see here, just featuring normal people and how it has benefited them as well. There you go. It's my podcast. I don't need to justify it. I actually went this morning. Look at that. Got a good pump on from those clean and jerks. It's pretty good. Anyway, that is all I have for you for this week's Ramble. So thank you ever so much for joining me, both on my second YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rees Rambles, and indeed on the podcast platforms as well. These go out every week at 2 minutes to midnight on a Friday night, UK time. And just one final little mention, one final shout out to the event that I mentioned right at the beginning of this very ramble. Of course, the Retro Collectives tabletop sale, which is happening on Sunday the 26th of July. I will be there with my own table, selling some of my wares, some of the machines that you may have seen featured on this channel, some other games and peripherals and things, as well as bits and pieces from my personal collection. If you want a selfie with me or an autograph, or you want me to sign anything, you can see my head just expanding, can't you, as I say this? I'd be more than welcome to do that as well. Card payments also accepted. I've managed to sort that out. Aren't I smart? But that's all I have for you for this week's Ramble, as mentioned. So thank you once again for joining me. And hopefully I will see you in the same time and place next week. That's all I got for you. Bye.